Why did Congress just call you?
They decided to have hearings regarding MKUltra, the CIA's secret brainwashing program. There were unredacted original letters describing horrific experiments. I struck gold.
Tom O'Neill is one of the world's leading authorities on Charles Manson. After 20 years investigating Manson, MKUltra, and America's darkest government secrets, he was called to testify before the United States Congress in 2026.
Manson wanted to ignite a race war.
Helter Skelter. And then the theory is that Charles Manson might have been a CIA experiment.
I don't know if he was programmed by these guys to do what he did, or if they experimented with him and then he went crazy on his own. I said, this was a CIA experiment gone wrong. And he said, absolutely not. It was a CIA experiment gone right. Then you have control of the person's soul. Do I think it's still going on now? I'm not supposed to tell this, but whatever. The staffer for the congressperson said, if you knew what we know, wow. I see what they see, and it's terrifying, and you wouldn't be agnostic.
Oh, that can't be true. But is it true?
Oh God, I'm gonna get in trouble. We have recovered.
You've got to stay until the end of this one, because that's when Tom O'Neill reveals the most staggering thing I've ever heard on this show. If this brings you value, please subscribe. Tom O'Neill, why did Congress just call you?
It was a surprise. It kind of came out of the blue, but they decided to have hearings on declassifying files regarding MKUltra, the CIA's secret brainwashing program from the 1950s, 60s, and I believe early 70s. So they had these hearings about 2 weeks ago, and they were chaired by a Congresswoman named Anna Paulina Luna, and it was her committee, and their objective was to see if there's more records out there, and if so, how do we get them, and also how were they kept secret all these years. So they found me because I wrote a book about Charles Manson, which presents a theoretical case that Manson intersected with this mind control program, MKUltra, when he was in the Haight-Ashbury district of San Francisco right after getting released from prison in '67. And it's really hard to, get sworn in front of Congress and the Capitol and then try to say what I just said and not sound like a lunatic. But luckily, the committee members had familiarized themselves with my book and my reporting, and I was able to get through it okay. I don't know if anything's going to happen. Famously, the records were all destroyed. I guess if I should tell a little more for your audience, the program was discovered in 1974, and they started having congressional investigations into it, and more information leaked out in 1975, 76, 77. And in a nutshell, what they learned was that Allen Dulles, the head of the CIA in 1953, had authorized MKUltra originally as a defensive effort against what U.S. intelligence believed the Chinese and Russians had learned to do to captured airmen. So we were at war with North Korea and China, and our pilots were getting shot down, and then they would be put on television in Korea, where they would say that, they would announce that they were dropping biological weapons, which is against the world law, on the populations over there, which the United States maintained we didn't. And the Americans learned that they had this brainwashing program using drugs and sensory deprivation, hypnotism, and other methods to erase people's minds, implant memories, and whatnot. So they decided to do a counter operation, MKUltra, mostly to figure out how to not allow that to happen to captured airmen. But then when they found out that it was actually possible to brainwash people, it went from defensive to offensive. So they started hiring scientists, researchers, doctors from outside the CIA, making them take loyalty oaths or secrecy oaths, and then funding them with millions of dollars to experiment on people in prisons, in institutions, in universities, on the street, and safe houses.
Did people know they were being experimented on?
No. So it was what's called unwitting. So the people didn't know that they were being dosed with LSD or other drugs. And some of them are pretty horrific experiments. And it was a horrible program. This is right after the Nuremberg trials ended in I think 48 or 49, and the Nuremberg Code was passed. And it also violated every Hippocratic oath a doctor takes about do no harm to a patient. And they're giving them drugs knowing, some of the objectives, particularly in the one scientist that I discovered documents showing that he'd been heavily involved in this after denying it up to the day of his death, were administering LSD to people without their knowledge and then trying to induce specific mental disorders in them. Fugue states, amnesias, psychosis, make it fixed, that kind of thing. So this was going on from it began earlier, right at the end of the World War II, because the Nazis had experimented with this in concentration camps on prisoners. And we started hiring Nazi scientists. It was called Operation Paperclip for MKUltra type human experimentation research, and also for our rocket engineering and stuff like that, and slipping them into the United States. But it really, became authorized officially, secretly in 1953 as MKUltra. And at that point, for 20 years, it was the most secretive program operated by the CIA and the most expensive. So when it was exposed, when Nixon was being forced out of office and on the verge of impeachment, but he resigned instead, the CIA knew that whoever came in next could find out that they'd had this illegal program. It's also illegal for the United States or the CIA to do any work domestically on our soil. It's against their charter. We can only do stuff overseas. So in and of itself, the fact that they were doing this all over the United States was a crime. So at that point, Richard Helms, who ran the CIA and had actually overseen MKUltra since 1953 and was right under Dulles for 15 years before Dulles was fired by John Kennedy, he ordered all the records destroyed. And a reporter named Seymour Hersh in 1974 found evidence of the program, and it was a slow drip. But when they finally did all the congressional investigations that ended in 1977, they realized and admitted we have no record of what actually happened, except for some financial records. So we could say where a lot of the operations took place, under what auspices, but not who the victims were and how extensive the experimentation was. So that's why 50 years later, 2 weeks ago, this task force thought, well, maybe now it's time to look back. And I'll say it, I'm a left-wing Democrat, very liberal, and this task force was authorized by Trump. And Trump, when he was inaugurated the second time, announced, did a presidential order that he was going to declassify secrets about UFOs, the 60s assassinations, MLK, JFK, RFK, and Malcolm X. And there was going to be this whole effort to finally reveal the deep state secrets. Let's forget about Epstein, Right. At least Congresswoman Luna is really serious about trying to get more information and trying to find out what they can do, because they've been in touch with me since the hearing.
It's the most remarkable thing that there's still stuff coming out about it.
Yeah.
It shows how secretive it was.
And they asked me at the hearing, when I'm on the record, do you think there's more records out there? And I said, well, the records that I found were only found by accident, because this Dr. Louis Jolyon West, who they called Jolly West, who was almost the architect of MKUltra, he was exposed in 1977 as being a part of it, and he ran the psychiatry department and neuroscience at UCLA, a very prominent, school here in the United States, just down the street a little bit. And he said, no, they asked me, to be involved with it, of course. And I said, no, LSD is too unpredictable and dangerous to be used on humans. I only use LSD in animal experimentation. Now, I didn't even have to prove that was a lie, because he'd done lectures where he talked about human experimentations with LSD in the 50s, before people started realizing how dangerous it was. But he knew how dangerous it was. Then he stopped talking about it, but there's a paper record of him. But what he was never proven was he was actually doing this experimentation for the CIA, under their authority and with their money, and then covering it all up. And he went to his grave in 99, never being investigated. His denial was enough. His name never came up again, except when other people like me, not me, because I would ask him, and he would say, no, of course I would never do stuff like that. So he accidentally left it in his files at UCLA. And when I found out he was connected to this medical clinic in San Francisco that Manson frequented with his followers, during the same period Manson transformed from this kind of harmless ex-con into this monstrous cult leader who could get the people who followed him to kill strangers just because he told them to, which was the main objective of MKUltra, was creating Manchurian candidates, people who would kill on command with no recollection of being programmed to do it.
Everyone says nothing is ever really free, and they're kind of right. Someone is always paying. My sponsor, Free Cash, just flips who that is. Instead of brands paying for ads you scroll past, they pay you to try their games and apps. It won't replace your salary, and offers vary by country, but you can get rewarded for things you might already do on your phone. You can pick an offer, follow the steps, and your progress gets tracked in the app. You can also check Free Cash's Trustpilot rating and App Store or Google Play ranking. Just make sure app tracking is enabled when prompted so your progress is credited properly. Once you reach a $25 minimum for your first cash out, there are multiple withdrawal options such as PayPal, Amazon, gift card, crypto, etc. Use my link or scan the QR code to try Free Cash for free and get a $10 bonus after completing your first offer.
That's when I went to UCLA and I said, I know Dr. West died a year ago. He'd been with you guys like 15 or 20 years. Did he leave his papers? Because usually they do that. They said, yeah, we just haven't processed them yet. And they had, I think, 200 or 300 boxes. And at that time I was writing a magazine article and I said, well, I'm on deadline. And the special collections director said, oh, sorry, usually that takes a year or two and we haven't even started. So I did a song and danced and begged and pleaded and wore her down. And she said, I'll release a box or two at a time. And I went to their special collections department under the library at UCLA every day or 3 or 4 days a week for about 2.5 months, just looking for that needle in the haystack. And there's this famous author named Robert Gottlieb who does the big, long, heavy books about Lyndon Johnson and presidents, and he's won Pulitzers. And his motto for work is turn every page, because he says you never know what you might find in an archive. So you have to look at every page, even if the file says, records of my summer vacation. And that's what I did. And in his files, 2 months in, I struck gold. There were letters, unredacted original letters between West and Sidney Gottlieb from 1953 describing horrific experiments West was about to do. Gottlieb telling him, this is great, you're a wonderful asset, we're so glad that you grasp what we need and what we want. And a year after designing this program of experimentation, an airman named Jimmy Shaver with no criminal record, 2 children, married, was found wandering in a gravel pit about, at that point, West was at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas, and about a mile from the base, he was wandering with his shirt off and scratches all over his body. And he had just raped and killed a 2.5-year-old girl that he had abducted from a parking lot. Her parents had gone there on July 4th, 1954. And they didn't have air conditioning. It was hot. And they went to the bar because bars they thought were safe then, a little town bar, and they let the kids play in the parking lot while they had a beer. And the little brother came running inside and said, Sherry Joe's gone, Sherry Joe's gone. A man took her. They found Jimmy and the girl's body, arrested him. And he said, I don't know how I got here. I don't know where I am. They took him in and charged him. His wife came to see him, and he didn't recognize his wife. And for, I think it was 2 weeks, he was described as being in a fugue state. At trial, West was assigned to find out what happened. And what they found out at trial was he was involved in an experimental program at the base hospital to cure him of debilitating migraine headaches. And West said in these letters, I'm going to experiment on my patients who come in for mental disorders, you know. So it's a long, complicated story, but kind of that's why I was asked to testify.
And then the theory is that Charles Manson might have been a CIA
So then,
experiment.
yeah, so that was 1954. And then by 1967, when Manson was released from prison, West took a sabbatical from Oklahoma, where he ran from 1956 to 69. He started their neuroscience program and chaired the psychiatry department, and did the brunt of his experiments for CIA at the hospital there and at little places around the campus. He took a sabbatical in 67 and ended up in the Haight-Ashbury district. In the summer of 67, at the same time Manson was kind of directed there when he was released from prison. He violated his parole, supposed to be here in LA. The next day he went to the Bay Area, got a new parole officer who was doing drug research at the main clinic named Roger Smith. And for the next year that he became the Manson we're familiar with, he was breaking the law, getting arrested, and Smith would always say, no, just leave him out, and not immediately send him back to prison, which would normally happen. West was researching subjects for his MKUltra experiments. So it's a theory. I could only put Manson and West in the same building, but I could never put them in the same room at the same time. But I present in my book a case which is additional information about what happened the next 2 years as Manson traveled to LA and escalated his crimes, and again was always released. The police knew exactly what he was doing. There were strange people kind of manipulating him and pushing him towards what ended up being the Tate LaBianca murders. So what I believe but can't prove yet, but I'm working on the second book, is that he was probably a product of this program. I don't know if he was programmed by these guys to do what he did, or if they experimented with him and then he went crazy on his own. I showed all my findings 5 or 6 years in to the authority on MKUltra. He was a psychiatrist and a lawyer who taught in Northern California named Alan Shefflin. And I'll never forget it. You know, we were having lunch and it was like our third meeting, and I showed him my documents and the connections between Manson and West in this clinic and what happened with Manson's trajectory for 2 years. And I said, Dr. Shefflin, do you think there's any chance that this was a CIA experiment gone wrong? And he said, absolutely not. It was a CIA experiment gone right, because they wanted to do something. I mean, if you know what a false flag is, or they had another program called Chaos at the same time, which was a CIA kind of surveillance, infiltration, and provocation program that started at the same time in 67 that the FBI started something called COINTELPRO. And both of these federal operations were to stop what they believed at the time was a revolution that was about to happen in America, because the rise of the Black Panthers and Black militancy, free speech, and mostly the anti-war movement, the Vietnam War. So in 1967, President Lyndon Johnson authorized the FBI to use COINTELPRO to infiltrate leftist groups, and Chaos to do the exact same thing. So they'd get informants, they'd infiltrate them, provoke them to commit crimes or to commit crimes against rival groups. And during those next 2 years, all kinds of murders were happening that were the result of Chaos and COINTELPRO. And the Manson murders famously, in the official version, where Manson wanted to ignite a race war and
Helter Skelter,
and make the world believe that the blacks were going to rise up and take over. And when it didn't happen fast enough, he had this sudden belief that he had to do something to ignite it. So he sent his followers to the house of Roman Polanski, not knowing who lived there, just that it was a house where these very prominent, beautiful Hollywood people would be, and just slaughter everybody. So it's hard to kind of tell all that and not sound nuts, but that's for people who don't know what those three programs are, MKUltra, Chaos, and COINTELPRO, they kind of all merged in 1969. And I think the result was the Tate LaBianca murders, which a lot of historians say ended the 60s, and made people terrified for the first time of hippies. Like, they were no longer peaceful, little, harmless people with love beads and long hair, but they were monsters who could come into your house and slice you to a million bits and leave blood writing on your walls.
Wow. That's a big thing. This is a whole big thing.
Yeah.
So it would be that they would have been giving him, is the strongest evidence what you were saying, that he kept committing these crimes, he'd go to prison for a second and be straight out, he was out on parole all the time?
From the day he was released, he wasn't allowed to leave Los Angeles County. He went up to the Bay Area and showed up at a parole officer here, and he said, "I'm Charles Manson. I want my parole here." And I have the letters. I also I got all these documents through a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests, which weren't easy. I would do the request, and then they'd say no, and then I'd have to get my father, who was a lawyer, a tax attorney, but he knew law, and I got him obsessed with it, and other people, to write better legal FOIAs and just beat them down until you started getting information. So I found a letter from the head of the parole office writing the head of the LA parole office saying, "This man showed up at our office and he's in violation and he thinks he can be represented here. You should take him back." And then all of a sudden there's missing letters, and then he's just assigned to this Roger Smith, who's got this really spooky background, who's working out of the same medical clinic as Jolly West, doing his research on drug use and violence, and at the same time managing, Manson's freedom. And he's the authority that Manson has to go see once a week. And by the end of the summer of 67, when Roger was actually opening in late 67, early 68, his amphetamine research project in the clinic, he had Manson see him there, the same place that all this stuff was happening, this cauldron, instead of in the official building downtown. So, there's a lot more background and stuff, but I know we don't have too much time, so I'm trying to just give you the brushstrokes.
The point being that he was treated completely differently.
Oh, yeah. He was an anomaly.
And worked very closely with these two people who we know were involved with the experiments.
Right. And then when he got to Los Angeles, and was at the Spawn Ranch, isolated there, and really, planning for Helter Skelter to happen, they had automatic weapons, underage girls, runaways, drugs, and the police had surveillance. I got all the reports. They knew this. Manson had a machine gun and a carbine. I don't know guns, but whatever those bullets are that you feed it, fell off the Jeep. And the police picked it up, the sheriff's department, and he went to the sheriff's department and he said, "I want my carbine back." And they gave it to him, and he's federal parolee. You're not allowed to have a knife, let alone a pistol, and this is for a machine gun.
Who's covering their tracks? Because Congress seem to want to know more about this.
You mean now, or?
I guess part of me is wondering, as you're speaking, I'm wondering, what do you do with somebody who seems to have committed these horrible crimes against humanity? They've just given people experimental drugs when they didn't even realize it. They've done them potentially to Charles Manson, hoping he'll kill people, but they've done it under the CIA.
Yeah.
So they've sort of, do you go to prison? What happens to you?
You mean the people who do it?
Yeah, because they were working for the CIA.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everything is so compartmentalized within those worlds, so there's deniability. So some people like Roger Smith might have only known that he had to keep this guy from being sent to prison and make him be in certain places. He might not have known any more than that. Another one of my big moments, and I don't think we've talked about it, but this took embarrassingly a long time for me to report and turn into a book. 20 years, almost to the day of, it began as a magazine assignment. It was supposed to be 3 months. On the 30th anniversary of the murders, a movie magazine asked me to do a think piece about it. And I fell down a rabbit hole and I finally got a collaborator the last year who pulled me out of the weeds. And I think we did a good book together and turned it in literally a year to the day I'd gotten the magazine. It's 20 years to the day that I got it. But, so there's moments that just, made everything worthwhile, because so much else is just lost time, where you're going down bad roads that don't lead anywhere. And I can't tell you how much wasted time there was. But another moment, I think, that kind of answers the last question you asked was, I took all my documents of this guy named Louis Watnick. He was a retired deputy DA here in Los Angeles who had become a Superior Court judge during that period that Manson was free. So he saw Manson as a judge on just a traffic violation. But I went to see him because I needed to talk to somebody who could speak with the knowledge of how things were done in 67, 68, 69. And I laid out all the documents, the arrest documents I'd accumulated from Manson, and then the release stuff, one after another after another. And this guy's dying. He's on a oxygen machine. I think he had throat or lung cancer, and he's talking in a rasp. And I had a tape recorder, and he's wheezing, and he's looking at all, and he goes, "This is chicken shit. This is all chicken shit." "What do you mean, Mr. Watnick, chicken shit?" He goes, they wanted him out. Somebody wanted him out. And he said he was more valuable outside than inside.
Manson.
And I said, "Who's they? Who's they?" And he goes, "Oh, that's your job." And I said, "I know, but you knew what they did back then." He goes, "Well, we weren't told. We knew there were informants that were protected, but you have to look at the FBI, you have to look at the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department, every agency, every federal agency and state agency. He could have been an informant for anyone, but the one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty is he was out there because someone needed him to do what he was doing." And he goes, "I hope it wasn't to do what he ended up doing." You know, Sharon Tate was 8.5 months pregnant, and they stabbed her to death while she's crying, begging them to save her baby. She didn't care about herself, and begging, calling out to her mother.
How do we know that? Is that the one?
Well, that's the testimony of, the killers subsequently, after they'd all been convicted and sent to prison. Well, actually, no, they had a death penalty phase. So when you're convicted, I don't know if it's the same way in the UK courts, but in a death penalty case, you have your guilt phase of the trial where the jury decides whether or not you did it. So they were all adjudged guilty, all meaning 4 people, Sharon, Charlie Manson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten. Tex Watson was tried separately. So once they were judged guilty, after the longest trial in the history of criminal courts in Los Angeles, was more than a year, then they have the death penalty phase where the same jury has to listen to testimony from psychiatrists and, do these people deserve to die for what they did? And during that guilt phase, Manson had such control over his followers that at that point, none of them had testified. They hadn't even put on a defense during the guilt phase, but during the death penalty phase, each of the Manson women took the stand to say, "We did it, we killed them." And they described in horrific detail killing, the 5 people at the Tate house, and then the 2 people the next night at the LaBiancas. Say Sharon, or Susan Atkins said, "Yeah, Sharon was begging for the life of her baby, and I said, 'I don't care about your baby, bitch.' And I stabbed her in the womb, and I tasted her blood, and it tasted sticky and sweet, and I liked it." And then they asked Patricia Krenwinkel what it's like to stab a woman, Abigail Folger, 28 times. And she said, "I don't know. It's just like she was there and I did it." And, they objectified them. They weren't talking about people. They were talking about objects. So they admitted to all that only because they wanted to get Manson free. So they said, "We did this on our own. Charlie had nothing to do with it. We wanted to kill them. Wow. We enjoy killing."
They're still in the cult at that point.
And then it took about 10 years for them to be snapped out of it. So Van Houten, the 3 main women, Van Houten, Krenwinkel, and Atkins, who went to prison for these murders, it was like 7 to 10 years for each of them to all of a sudden have a moment of clarity and say, "Oh my God, what did I do?" I mean, it's like waking up from a nightmare and you realized who you were then and what you'd done, and you have to live with that. And there's a great interview of Susan Atkins after that, saying on camera in a prison interview, I still can't get Charlie out of my head. I hear his voice. His thoughts are my thoughts. He's still telling me to do stuff, and I just can't get him. And that's like 10 years later. I mean, that's serious brainwashing programming.
Do you think that they were also given these drugs and things?
I think they were victims. And, only one of them is still in prison, Patricia Krenwinkel. Atkins died in prison about 10 years ago of brain cancer. And Van Houten got released, paroled. She's the first one of them that were involved in Tate LaBianca to get paroled about 2 years ago. I could never, if I were asked to go to a parole hearing and testify, I don't know if I'd do it because I can't say absolutely. But I believe more likely than not, they were victims of the CIA and Manson.
So they were slipped drugs.
Yeah, because
without
that's
knowing.
well, they knew they were doing drugs that Manson was giving them, but they didn't know what was happening to them. So Manson was doing what was called patterning, which is what they did. The CIA was doing, especially this one doctor in Canada at the McGill Hospital, where he would give people LSD consecutive days for months at a time and then play recordings to them over and over again to repattern their brains. And Manson did that at the Spahn Ranch. He got them down there about a year before the murders, was giving them LSD every day and then doing weird, like having himself crucified in front of them and telling them he was Jesus and Satan, and just again, and he never took the LSD. They took the LSD, and then he would order them all kinds of, mind games, told men to have sex with other men who weren't gay, the women to have sex with each other, and everything was, it was called DDD, now I forget the exact word for it. West invented it. It was, I wish I had my notes with me. I should have, DDD and MKUltra, if you Google that, or even Louis J. West.
Chaos, the Manson murders it comes up with, but it doesn't say DDD, as in 3 letters.
It's 3 letters. It's
DDD.
Desensitization, disassociation, something else. And it was like Manson had all of a sudden become a scientist and knew how to use this very sophisticated technology to get people isolated, desensitize them while giving them drugs, and then basically hypnotize them. I mean, Manson studied hypnosis in prison. Danny Trejo, this actor, released a memoir a year or two ago, and he said that Manson hypnotized him in prison in the early 60s.
He's that guy, he's in like every film, isn't he?
Yeah, the character actor.
Yeah.
I think he was a gang member at something, a real rough Latino guy who, went good and became a macho actor, character actor.
It's depersonalization, derealization disorder.
Yeah. And he said that Manson hypnotized him when they were, I think, at Terminal Island in LA in the early 60s and had him believe that he was on an LSD trip when he wasn't on LSD.
Wow. So Manson seems, in this telling, in this part of the story, he's slipping drugs to people, he's giving them the bit of the drug, he's making them do stuff, and he's hypnotizing, and he's in charge. But then, to what extent was he aware of what might have been happening to him?
What was happening to him? That's the thing. That's the thing where I hit my head against the wall. Was he aware that? Was he at one point working with them to do this, and then it's something? West reported in this is something I think one of my best moments at the hearing, because I wanted them to know this. In 1955 to 56, West submitted a paper to Sidney Gottlieb, the head of MKUltra, and said he had accomplished kind of like one of the most important goals of the program. He had learned how to, using LSD and hypnotism and other drugs, that's what he says in the letter, I can take true memory from a subject without their awareness and replace it with a fictitious memory, something that never happened, and make them believe that happened and that's permanent. He goes, I can replace true memories with false memories. I mean, when you can do that to a person, that's like if you had dinner at El Coyote last night and he says, no, I want him to think that he was in Arizona interviewing Frankie Muniz last night. I'll erase your Frankie Muniz experience and you'll never know it. I mean, then you have control of the person's soul.
But is that possible?
He said it was. So here's what was important at the hearing. What I found was West sent that report in, and I found that among his papers and his files. And then I found the same report that was shared with Congress at the last hearings in 1977. And they gave them a dummy of that report where they changed his finding. And instead of saying it's what he had accomplished, it's what he wanted to accomplish.
Wow.
And in it, they changed him where they said the plans are to possibly use LSD and hypnosis, but that has not been done yet. They completely lied. They gave them false documents. So I said to the committee 2 weeks ago, this is what they did in 1977. We don't know that if you're starting to get new records again, they're going to do the same thing to you. You can't trust you can't take anything at face value. The problem is I don't know how to tell them where to get the good stuff, except I did tell them, actually. I said, you can do what I did. You can dig through people's papers and send your staffs to dead scientists, because everybody's dead now who participated in this. But you can send them to their children and grandchildren and say, hey, did grandpa leave a box in the attic or something? But, that's a wild goose chase. And I got really fucking lucky when I found the papers I found. I wouldn't have had a book if I hadn't found those papers, I don't think. And it was really a crazy hunch. There was something in my gut. I just thought there's too many coincidences with this guy, West, where he was, what he was doing. Then he gets exposed and he said he had nothing to do with it. I just feel like I'm going to find something in there. And I almost feel like I wished it into being. And of course, I was terrified that it wasn't authentic. And I took it immediately to a guy named John Marks, who was a whistleblower who found financial documents in 1975 that had been accidentally preserved by the CIA and not destroyed. And they were the records that showed where stuff had happened and how much had been spent, and some of the doctors involved, but they didn't have what the substance of the experiments were. And I took them to him, and he said, this is practically, there's one 9-page letter between West and Gottlieb from June of 53. He goes, this is a blueprint for the entire operation. Nothing's redacted. It's like a gold mine. He said, because he wrote a book called The Search for the Manchurian Candidate that came out in 78, really the first book about MKUltra. He said, if I had this document and the other ones he showed, my whole book would be different. And I said, well, that's what I've got to do. And he goes, well, I'll leave you with a warning. If you do that book, your life will never be the same. I'm like, nobody's going to kill me. He goes, no, that's not what I'm talking about. He goes, you're going to be bombarded for the rest of your life with people who think they were MKUltra victims, either were or are now. And that's exactly what happens.
You're getting emails all the time?
Yeah. After the hearing, usually, the book came out 6 years ago. Usually I get 2 or 3 a week.
Whoa.
And sometimes a lot more if I do a podcast or something. But after the hearing, I've been getting about 15 a day for the last 2 weeks, some days 30.
What percentage do you take seriously?
Pardon me?
What percentage of them do you take seriously?
Unfortunately, I hate to say this, but it's the truth. I think most of them, if not all of them, are sadly mentally ill people who are looking for a reason why they're ill. And all of a sudden they have something to blame it on. And then they can say, oh, it's not because I'm chromosomically challenged or it's something the government has done.
Chromosomically challenged is a way of putting it.
I just made that up. I don't even know if that makes any sense.
Very PC way.
I have no idea.
I'm just one of those guys, I'm chromosomically challenged.
Yeah, maybe we can coin that.
Yeah, I like that.
But no, most of them I answer, but I basically say, my research and reporting stops in 1973, 74. And 6 years ago, the majority of the people who wrote me thought they were experimented on all the way back then. But they're all dying if they're not dead. So now it's people who think it's happening right now. And there are a lot of, and I that's another question that I was asked, I think 3 times at the hearing, do I think it's still going on now? And I had to say, I don't know. I said, I believe that the CIA lied in 1977 at the last hearing when they said they went up there and their strategy was admit we did this, admit it was a horrible thing to do to people, we're ashamed of it, and we're willing to pay reparations. They made all these false promises about finding victims, giving them lifetime medical care and paying for their medical care the rest of their lives. They never did that. And the government, I was so pissed off, it's in the book, allowed them not to there not to be an investigation afterward to find victims. But the other thing they had to do was say everything was a waste. You know, they allowed themselves to look foolish. Like, yeah, the Washington Post had a headline, "The gang that couldn't spray straight," because some of the experiments in the safe houses where they would take over an apartment in San Francisco or New York, Lord Johnson there by prostitutes, they would spray LSD into the air and see if people would inhale it. And then, so they said that nothing had been effective, nothing had worked. I believe not only had it worked, it had been extremely successful, but they didn't want the world to know that because they wanted to keep doing it. So my answer is, I believe most likely, yeah, it still exists under different names. And you know, they could be using much higher, more advanced technology now, you know, with computer internet, all the scientific shit that I'm really bad at talking about.
They'd be messing with people's like brain cells now, wouldn't
yeah.
they?
Oh yeah.
Neurons and things.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So I want to treat each person that writes me with respect and say, you know, they actually could be, but I said, I'm not the one who can help you because you need to speak to somebody who knows what's going on now. And I don't. I'm really, I wish I could help because you don't know, you know, how ill these people are. Some people, one kid who's been writing me about 4 years, you know, threatens to kill himself all the time. And I don't know what to do with that. You know, I've told him, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. Please find someone in your family and talk to them. And my family's trying to kill me. And the other thing is, every time there's an assassination or some mass killing, I look to see if they're one of my followers on my social media, because that's why I'm real careful also. I mean, nobody has told me they're going to kill somebody else. And if that happens, I don't know what I'd do with that. I might have to turn it over.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, but that hasn't happened yet. It's just, but Mark's told me that in 2000, he said, when my book came out in 78, he goes, I had people camping outside my house because they were desperate to see me because they think I'm the one that can help them find their truth. And luckily, I mean, a couple people haven't showed up at my house, but they found my, I thought, private phone number and called and stuff. And luckily, that's maybe a good thing about the internet. I just get emails and emails and emails. Yeah, man.
I guess this is so complicated because for years, I think people are always saying things are conspiracy theories and anything like that doesn't seem to go on. This is incontrovertible proof that it does.
Yeah.
And then I want to understand then, you know, Congress is trying to find out what's going on. So it's not that they don't know. So then who is, I guess, the CIA? And are these the people who know potentially about aliens and things? Would the president even know about all of this stuff? Like, who are these shadowy people?
Well, what's interesting is when this was active, supposedly the presidents didn't know about it. So we had Eisenhower, then we had Kennedy, then we had, Johnson knew about it because Johnson made it a point to find out what we could do to stop what, again, he thought was going to be a revolution.
If he knew about it, Kennedy must have known about it.
Well, Kennedy died, you know, in 63, and it was, I don't think, supposedly they wouldn't tell him because he would have stopped it. And the head, so when Kennedy fired Dulles, you know, about a year before he was assassinated, the new CIA director, who I think was McComb, he never knew about it. He ran the CIA and they kept it a secret from him. It was so compartmentalized because they knew what they had an inspector general, and he said, what we're doing is an illegal operation. We need to, you know, figure out how to stop doing this. I know we've begun. I can't remember what this memo is. It's amazing. But that guy, all of a sudden, he's not the inspector general anymore. So, you know, some people said Dulles was more powerful than each of the presidents that he was a CIA director under. And, you know,
so they might know about UFOs, for example.
Yeah, you know, it's weird because when I went up for the hearings, I went about 3 or 4 days early because there was a disclosure conference at the Capitol by these very respectable former elected officials who aren't elected now, or staffers who have started this very kind of buttoned up, sober disclosure group. And I think they're called Disclosure something. And they had an authorized conference in the Capitol building for a whole day, and about 10 different senators and Congress people spoke to them. It wasn't a hearing. Nobody took an oath. Just, you know, what do we expect the government to tell us if they're going to tell us? How do we tell? That kind of thing. And they invited me there just because they wanted me to be present. I said, I don't know anything about this, but I'll come, sure. I just came a day earlier than I would have. And in the middle of it, I left to meet with the Democratic staff of the committee that was going to be questioning me a week later. And on the way, I'm not supposed to tell this, but whatever. On the way to the meeting, the staffer for the congressperson said, you're coming from the disclosure conference, right? I said, yeah, how'd you know? He goes, well, we all work together. We know everything that's going on. Because, they had all been colleagues at one point, because a lot of them are former congressional staffers or members. And I go, yeah. He goes, well, what'd you think of it? I go, I don't know. It's over my head. He goes, well, what do you think about UFOs? And I said, honestly, I'm agnostic on UFOs. I keep an open mind. I can't go down those rabbit holes because I'm trying to do a second book.
Yeah.
And I can't keep up with all my reporting on, murder and CIA and FBI and government shit. If I go into the UFO area, it's too much of a distraction. So I read the headlines and I listen to people, but I don't listen closely. And he goes, oh, well, if you knew what we knew. I'm like, we what? He goes, I'm the head of staff for Congressperson so-and-so. I'm like, yeah. He goes, and we go into SCIFs. And I don't know if a SCIF is a place where elected officials like senators and congress people are showed classified material. It's a safe place, and it's like a little room in like a catacomb in the Capitol or the White House, and they're shown highly secret documents. So this guy was probably this person, I've said his gender, was probably mid to late.
Narrowed it down 50% now of the population.
I know, yeah. Maybe he was non-binary. He wasn't, believe me. But he said, so I think he's on his third congressperson. So that's his job, is like he runs the staffs for the congress people. He goes, so I go into the SCIFs with them and I have to sign these confidentiality oaths, and I shouldn't be telling you this, and I'm not going to give you specifics, but I go in and I see what they see, and it's terrifying, and you wouldn't be agnostic.
Oh, that can't be true. Is it true? I want to believe.
So then I said to him, I go, you're talking to someone who's a real lay person. I have friends. I mean, I know, like, Danny Jones, we were talking about, Jesse Michaels. He's the one who has American Alchemy. These guys have podcasts that they do just on UFOs. Not Danny does lots of stuff, but Jesse's almost all UFOs. And I'm like, if he were here, he would know exactly what to ask this guy. And I said, all right, well, they keep releasing, supposedly new photos, new videos. Why are they still kind of blurry? And and he said to me, oh God, I'm going to get in trouble. This is just in Europe, right? This podcast. He said to me, the reason he didn't use the word limited hangout. He goes, we have to release something because Trump that's his edict. We have to do disclosure, but we can't release everything because we have recovered crafts and recovered beings. And if we release, for instance, what we know about those videos about velocity and how they are able to vanish and move and go on and all that, we're developing that technology for our defense program, our warfare. And we can't release all that because then the enemy has it and they're going to develop the same technology. That's why everything is limited. So I'm never going to be asked back, but that's okay. And he told me a couple other things and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm kind of a believer.
What else did he tell you?
Well, the thing is, so much of the science is over my head because I'm a dummy. But he was talking about jet propulsion and the stuff so they basically have crafts. And I think it's in these I haven't seen Spielberg's movies, but I know that a lot of the people who believe this stuff believe that we have recovery and they're hidden somewhere and then they're reassembled and we're trying to figure out how they work. He said, we figured out how they do what they do that normal man-made crafts can't do, and we're developing that weaponry. The other interesting thing he said during the meeting was, at that point, then there's 3 more people like him for the different 3 other congressmen. And he said, remember what I told you about the SCIFs? I don't know how it even came up, but he said, something about, maybe I was talking about how horrible it is to write about, a pregnant woman getting stabbed 17 times and that kind of stuff. And he goes, well, it's like I told you, we have nightmares from what we learn in skiffs. And he goes, in fact, I was the one, no, I'm really saying who he was. He goes, I was the one who got them to not pass a bill, but make a rule that each of our staff, people who are staff to us, anyone that has to go into skiffs who's not elected, has to get psychiatric care, because you need to learn how to live with these secrets and they haunt you. So there were 4 people with him at the hearing sitting at the prep meeting. And I said, so all you guys are in free therapy? And they all said, yup. And then one woman said, well, I'm not. I go, oh, well, why not? Because you're fine. She goes, no, because I just started here and I'm an intern. Do I get free therapy? She didn't even know about it. So I think it's pretty serious, but I don't really know much more. I would tell you, actually, if I had anything else to tell you, I'd tell you off the record, but I think I've told you pretty much everything he said. Are you a UFO guy?
No, but we've done a bit on it every now and then. I'm probably the same as you. Like, well, it just seems impossible, and it seems the distances are just too great.
Yeah.
And could they get here? And why would they sort of come and, I guess, to observe us if they're?
Yeah.
But then surely, how could we have captured their stuff? Because if they're so clever and so advanced, they've gotten here, and now we've got their bits and pieces and things. I don't know what the story would be unless they've come sort of, and why are they not just popping up? There's too many governments in the world. They could have popped up in any country.
Well, I mean, the implication is other countries have recoveries too and stuff.
So they're all in, and there's never been one country, or a couple of hundred years ago before this was all kicking off, and they were just like, oh, here, paintings of the alien that was found.
Oh, well, if you watch these guys like Danny Jones and Jesse, they have guys on there who talk about, the pyramids in Egypt being created by aliens because of the engineering and the drawings that are, 10,000 years old of alien-like creatures. But again, I see that stuff superficially and I'm like, wow, that's interesting, but I'm not going to pay attention and then do the required reading.
You come all this way across the galaxy and you build some sort of dusty triangles in the desert. But no, I want to believe, because how fascinating. There's something else out there.
Yeah.
So that, what you've just told me, that's wow. That's pretty.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I don't know why he trusted me with that.
He shouldn't have.
He should.
But what different? What's Russia going to learn from you having said that?
Yeah. No, I'm just worried about him losing his job. That's all. He
won't.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm kind of pissed at them because he was on the Democratic side. So there's a subcommittee, and the ranking committee is the Republicans who call the hearing. So there were 6 of them. And then the subcommittee is the Democrats, and there's 6 of those. So I was meeting with the subcommittee because they don't know what's going to happen at the hearing. They're not told anything. So they asked me to come in, and they wanted to know what I was going to talk about. And I didn't understand any of this because I'd never done it before. I said, I thought it was going to be the staff of the Republicans and the Democrats talking to me. They go, no, it's just us. And I go, oh, okay, well, what do you need to know? And they go, whatever you're going to say, we need to know in advance because they won't tell us. I'm like, isn't this supposed to be bipartisan where you're trying to get the information?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, they're using it for political stuff.
That's
everything.
A shame.
It is. And it was true. And then it turned out they didn't send any of the Democratic senators to the hearing. So I wasn't questioned by the people from my own party. And luckily, the Republicans actually, they didn't politicize it, which was good. And I saw those staffers who I had met with sitting up there because they had to be there to find out what happened, but not one of them went there. And at one point I was going to say something in my testimony about being disappointed, but I wasn't sure because they're all up on this dais. And I wasn't sure, well, maybe that's a Democrat, but he's just not asking questions because I don't know who they all are. I don't know how many hundreds that are elected. But when I found out after the fact that none of them had come there, I wished I had said something like, if you guys are really serious about this, the people on the other side of the aisle should have been here and should have been asking me questions, even, critical questions. If they wanted to, say I was full of bullshit, defend myself, I'd do it. But so that's his punishment for not getting his congressperson up there on the dais.
The alien stuff and the UFO stuff, with the MKUltra, the stuff you said sounds very real, but then there's also, didn't they try and get people to do things like walk through walls? And
Yeah, remote viewing and things like that. That's really beyond my pay grade, because I was mostly looking at what West did. This one psychiatrist, he was the only one I could document his experiments and his goals and what he did for about 15 years. I do know they had, and there's a movie coming out about a guy, and I can never pronounce his name. His first name is Andre Puerich. It's spelled Puharich.
Right.
And he was kind of do you know who Uri Geller is? The Israeli psychic who
the spoon bending.
He was kind of his mentor.
Right.
And they both, I think Uri Geller came from Israel, and Puerich, I think, was from Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually had this like commune, I think in the Hudson Valley or the Catskills, where he found like a dozen children who were gifted and supposedly could telecommunicate with aliens and other beings. And they lived there with him, and he was studying them, and they were doing transporting bodies and stuff, kids. And he was part of working for MKUltra for the psychic stuff, the ESP studies and all that. And the guy who made the movie is named Gregory, I think Macello or something, and it's coming out, I think, at the end of the summer. So all the questions about that stuff, if you ever want to get him as a guest, I'll hook you up. I think he's going on Danny Jones any minute now.
Just need them to be skeptical enough, because like Uri Geller was caught out.
He was called out, yeah. And again, I don't know enough about him, but I think he was on Johnny Carson or something.
Yeah, that's right.
And he couldn't do it, or
because they didn't let him use his spoons.
Yeah, it was
to do the spoon
like that.
trick.
Yeah,
it was James Randi had sort of gotten in there and made sure he didn't have access to his own spoons, and he couldn't. I mean, humiliating.
Yeah. Yeah.
He really kept going with it.
Well, I'm glad you're that skeptical, because sometimes I'm on podcasts where people are the opposite. And, it took me, and I say this a lot, but it took me 20 years to write the book, because I wanted to examine every possible way I could be wrong before I'd say something was right. And to disprove it, try as hard as I could to disprove something. And that's why I'm really careful. And even at the hearing, I kept qualifying, saying, I haven't proven this. I'm presenting a theory that is circumstantial, and I think it's pretty compelling, and I'm still trying to, but this is what I found out, and I can show you what was lied to you about, what was lied to Congress, and then what was lied to by, the CIA, and I think that's as important.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you much more credible, and I think hopefully audiences want that as well in YouTubers, not ones who just fall for anything.
I know, yeah.
But it means that when you said that bit about what they're hiding, that suddenly that feels true now.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
If you're just going to go with everything and go like, oh, that's all true, and Uri Geller just couldn't bend that particular spoon.
Yeah.
It doesn't. No one's going to believe anything you say.
Right.
What about Marilyn Manson? As you know, I've just interviewed Evan Rachel Wood, who had stories about him. Swastika tattoos, apparently, all these kinds of things, and obviously his name.
He didn't take his clothes off when I was with him.
Yeah. So he was a big fan, obviously, of Charles Manson.
Yeah, I don't know enough about him personally. I know so what you're asking about is I hung out with him one night at his house right after the book came out, and I knew him by reputation. And I don't like heavy metal music. No. And I don't know if they would even call it heavy metal. I know he covered a song by my favorite performer of all time, Patti Smith.
Is that Tainted Love, or is that another song?
No, she did a song that she won't perform anymore called Rock and Roll N-Word.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it's a song where she's reclaiming the word and say, in her lyrics to the song, she says, Jesus Christ was an N-word. So was Muhammad, so was Gandhi, and she was trying to say it's the most powerful thing you can say about someone in a beautiful way. And it's an amazing song, but about after Black Lives Matter and everything, she finally said, you know what? I'm too privileged to perform that song anymore, and as a white woman, I'm not going to ever do it again.
I read today about a restaurant in Buenos Aires. I used to live there, called Big N-Word Burgers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently it's good. But they just have different sensibilities over there. They don't give a shit.
Maybe it's just the wrong translation or something. Maybe
it's
that
not. It's
Okay.
not. It's not.
Well, that's all I knew about Marilyn going
Yeah.
in was that, and I like his version of the song. But
Okay, nice.
so in 2020, like 6 months after the book came out, my agents started getting calls from Marilyn, and they didn't believe it was him for some reason, and they didn't even bother me with it. And then finally, his receptionist, or no, his assistant took one of the calls, and she said, I actually think this is him, because she was a fan and she's seen interviews of him speaking. She said, it really does sound like him. We should at least let Tom know. So they told me what was going on. I said, just have him reach out to me. And if I think it's him, yeah, I'll go anywhere almost. So he did. And he seemed like he called me, I think, after a couple of emails. And I thought, I'm really sure it's him from what little I know. And he wanted me to come up to the house to listen to an audio tape. So he had lived at Cielo Drive. After the Tate murders, the guy who owned it, Rudy Altobelli, had it about 10 more years and then sold it, or still rented it. I can't remember, but at one point in the 90s, Trent Reznor and Marilyn Manson moved in together and were there for a year or two and recorded music there. And I'm not a fan of, I think I love Trent Reznor's soundtracks for films, but I don't know their music, but I know that they recorded in the house, and that was kind of a dark, macabre side of who they were.
They were 9 Inch Nails for those.
9 Inch Nails, yeah.
Yeah. And the song Tainted Love is Soft Cell, isn't it?
Soft Cell, yeah. Who just performed at the Hollywood Bowl like a week or two ago. And
cool.
Friends of mine invited me, but I couldn't go. I think I was in D.C.
Yeah.
But so Marilyn said he found an audio tape there at the house when he was living there that he's kept all these years, and he really wanted me to hear it, but it was too dangerous for him to talk about it on the phone. And I'm like, Marilyn, you don't have to lure me up there with a carrot. Just invite me up there and I'll come. So I went up there and I brought my collaborator, Dan, and we got there at 11 o'clock. And do you know his band well? Or
No.
He has a collaborator named Twiggy, who I guess composes a lot of the music with him, and he always performs in a dress. And he was up there, and they had had a falling out, and Marilyn had told us this later. He said, I fired him because he had been accused of keeping his girlfriend a prisoner in his basement. And again, this was before the other revelations came out.
Whoa.
And he said, I fired him because we were about to go on tour like 5 years ago when the revelations about Twiggy came out. And he goes, I knew Twiggy didn't do it. I knew he was innocent, but I knew that people thought that I did that kind of stuff. He goes, but I felt bad about it, and I invited Twiggy tonight, and it's the first time I'm seeing him since I fired him 5 years ago. He said since then he's gone through rehab, he's off heroin or whatever he was on. He's really cleaned up. And he told us this after. Twiggy opened the door, and Dan, my collaborator, who's a lot younger and a huge music fan, he's like, I can't believe Twiggy is leading us into Marilyn's house. They don't even speak. They had a huge falling out. And then we found out that Marilyn thought the most comfortable setting for them to have their big reconciliation was with me there, because I was a distraction.
Whoa.
So Twiggy, the reason he's trying to play this audio tape, and they couldn't figure out, something was off, and it took hours. And eventually I heard it, and I'm like, it's Roman Polanski's polygraph that he did with the police that you can buy on the internet.
Oh, okay.
And I had to be, kind of polite to Marilyn, because he was being a good host. He was serving lots of recreational stuff.
Recreational.
Yeah. And,
stuff.
Yeah. And it was getting late. And I said, Marilyn, this is a Polanski polygraph, which I have, but I go, I think you've got more of it than I heard. I think maybe you have an extended version. So thank you. He goes, yeah, I know it, So, the end result was we had a crazy night. Twiggy went home, I think at like 2 a.m, and then the good stuff came out that he didn't want Twiggy to be tempted with. And then we left at 7 a.m. before I died. But he was a great host, and it was fun. And one of the funny things was, I don't know if I should be joking about this. Well, this isn't bad. He was obsessed with Taylor Swift, and we thought he was joking. She had just released a record, and he had this massive screening room with no furniture. So we're sitting on the floor, and that's where he wanted us to hear the audio tape because it had the best sound system. All the windows are blacked out. It's dark. I kept tripping over bottles of tequila that Dan said were like $800 bottles of tequila. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm so sorry, Marilyn. Because I know it was because it spills. And he's like, don't worry, I've got cases of those in the basement. But he kept playing us different Taylor Swift songs. And it was genuine. I thought it was irony or he was mocking her, but he really liked her. And then he was playing us his new music and just telling us stories and stuff. I had heard rumors, but the stuff that came out, I guess, about Rachel Wood came out later. He was really fucking funny and really smart and sweet. I hope he didn't do the stuff he did, but I don't know enough about it. But it was a fun night, and I got to say I spent a night at Marilyn's.
Did you see how he was with his girlfriend at the time?
I remember looking her up. So he told us they had a fight over what they were going to wear to the Oscars, which was either the next day or the day after. And I think it was the next day. And he said, so she's not coming down. She really wanted to meet you.
She was like up in the room.
She was up in the bedroom. Didn't
come down at all.
Sulking, no. Sulking. I mean, we didn't even get there till 11 or 12. Maybe she went to bed at midnight.
I just asked because, I mean, the story Evan tells, and these things are always difficult because it's like a he said, she said. Yeah. And then if you look into it too much, then it's not fair on the potentially abused victim. Right. But then at the same time, what if it is, you don't know. But there were a lot of stories of like her being, excited for things or whatever, and then she was just locked in a room. Yeah. So I'm just wondering.
Was there like physical and sexual abuse, or was it psychological?
Yeah, physical and sexual as well.
Boy.
From her, what she says, yeah.
Yeah. And I think Rose McGowan might have said similar stuff, another actress who was with him. And then he was with an exotic dancer named, I forget. I can't remember if she made those allegations.
Eventually you go, okay, well.
Yeah, if they multiply. I do think he's kind of on his rehab tour.
Okay.
Because I know he got fired by his agency. Then Kanye took him on stage.
Did he?
When Kanye got canceled for the Nazi stuff a few years ago, he reached out to Marilyn and said, fuck y'all, I'll get the other canceled guy and have him. They did an appearance somewhere. And I think they were collaborating on something. But
imagine the conversations between those two.
I don't know. Have you had Kanye on your podcast?
No, I would. I'd interview anyone. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, you're a journalist.
Yeah.
And I go to. You were talking about your friend, kind of our friend Sean Atwood's houses. I go to Peter Thiel's house for dinner.
Oh, do you?
Only he's.
What's his house like?
Oh, it's everything you'd imagine. It's up in the hills and it's massive,
it's enormous. Yeah.
Yeah, and very well decorated.
Huh.
And I didn't talk about it, but Bret Easton Ellis, do you know him?
American.
Yeah, so he was at a couple of the dinner parties. Peter had them for me because he does this thing where he invites people he's interested in to his house and has like 15 guests and makes a beautiful dinner. Well, he doesn't make it, the staff does. And you're kind of like a monkey on a chain performing, and it's exhausting. I thought it was just going to be me hanging out, but it's like he's on the spectrum. All those guys are.
I've been at a thing like that you're not supposed to talk about what the thing is. And I remember being very excited to go and then having exactly that feeling of, oh, I'm the monkey.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of billionaires around me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm there to entertain them. They are the main event.
Yeah.
They're what this is for.
Right.
The party's for them. Right. I'm one of various monkeys here.
Yeah. It's weird. But, then... So Bret Easton Ellis talked about meeting me at the first dinner. He was actually... They had two of them a week apart.
Uh-huh.
And he talked about it on his podcast, and then all of a sudden people started attacking me and saying I'm a friend of Peter Thiel's. I'm not a friend of Peter. I mean, I'm a journalist, and as I said, if Hitler invited me to the bunker, of course I'd go to the fucking bunker. I mean,
Thiel's right wing.
He's right wing. Yeah, I mean, my politics are complete opposition.
But that's
to
how
him.
it should be, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
Everyone in my family is on a different side of political things.
Yeah.
You and I'm probably closer to Peter Thiel stuff. Mm-hmm. Just for you to, I don't care. Although, oh no, you've gone quiet now. You don't like that.
No. I'm just imagining. No. I have friends. I have friends from both sides because that's how you learn shit. And you can argue with them. And I don't talk politics with Peter, but I try to learn. I mean, I'm fascinated by power.
Yeah,
and he's one of the most powerful people on the planet, and
all a bit spectrumy as well.
Oh yeah,
those guys.
Yeah. but it's an opportunity for me to see how someone like that is in their home. And the second night I was there, the first night, he kind of ends the dinner, and this is the spectrum part. He just kind of goes, okay, we're finished here. And everybody jumps up and leaves. And it's so abrupt, not like, oh, thanks for coming. And this is funny. He walked up to me with a copy of my book.
Yeah.
And he said, would you sign this, Tom? And I said, oh, yeah, of course. And I have this automatic thing when I sign a book. Someone told me once that if you personalize a signature in a book, it's less valuable to people who try to sell them. So if it's just your name without like to Peter, if it's just your name and he ever wants to sell it, he can get a lot more money if it doesn't have anything personalized. So I just was on automatic drive. I said, do you want me to just sign my name, or do you want me to personalize it? Because if I personalize it, it won't be that expensive. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, you're not going to resell the book. You have billions and billions. And it was the only time he laughed the whole night, because he's a nice guy, but he's like a robot. It's just like no sense of humor.
He found that funny though.
And then the second, he laughed because I think he knew it was genuine. Like all of a sudden I probably went red. Like, why am I asking a billionaire? You can get $200 instead of $100 if you try to sell it on eBay.
Yeah.
And then the second night I went there, at the end of the dinner, he did, okay, we're all done. And he goes, do you want to stay? Because we've never really had one-on-one time. And he's like a little boy, and he's like, just, if you don't mind, could you stay, like, we could talk. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And he's, you want to do inside or outside? We were eating outside because it was COVID, not that anyone wore masks, but I think he was assuming that somebody might, and he said, so do you want to stay outside or go inside? And I said, well, I'd rather go inside because I haven't really gotten to see your beautiful house. So we went in there and we talked for about 2 or 3 hours, and it's late, it's like midnight, and I was drinking a lot at dinner and stuff because I'm nervous and because I like to drink. And I was tired, and finally at like midnight I said, Pierre, I gotta go, I'm real tired, I'm sorry. He goes, oh fine, sure. And then Dan, my collaborator, who had been at the dinner the week before, wasn't invited the second week. They said don't bring him because they're just control freaks. Dan's great and should have been there, but anyway, he said, you have to call me as soon as you're done because I want to hear everything that happened, because he had witnessed what happened the week before, and it's weird. We don't have enough time to talk about it. But I go out to the Uber that comes to the massive gates with security guys with guns and shit, because he has all these threats. And I'm like, well, it's going to be 3 or 4 in the morning in New York, but Dan I call him and I say, Dan, he goes, why is it so late? The dinner went that late? I go, no, everyone left 3 hours ago, but Peter wanted to talk. He goes, what'd you talk about? And I said, well, I started telling him what we talked about. I go, but I got really tired and wanted to go home, so I asked if it was okay to leave. He goes, what? He goes, you are sitting with one of the most powerful people in the world and you end the interview? I go, well, it wasn't an interview, it was social. He goes, but you still should have stayed there until the sun came up. And he was absolutely right.
Wow.
Because I would get more and more, but I was too exhausted.
Yeah, I've had that before with someone as well.
Yeah.
You end up leaving and you're almost like kicking yourself that I've gone home early, but
I know.
You can't be tired. I'm not being tired. It's just
one other thing. So since the hearings, I've been asked to do a lot of podcasts and live TV stuff. And my friends, my lefty friends and family, are angry at me for going on something called News Nation, which is a right-wing kind of Fox thing.
Is that Alex? It's not Alex Jones, is it?
No, but he goes probably on there a lot.
Right.
And I said to them, look, I'm talking about my research and my reporting. I'm not talking about their politics. And fucking Rachel Maddow, you don't know who these people are.
No.
The left wing, the lefty, the people who align with my politics, who have news platforms, they're not asking me. So I'm going to the people who ask me, and I'll use their platforms because I want to tell what I found and have as many people learn about it as possible.
Well, that whole thing of, look, people, I don't want to get all partisan about it. You tend to see, at least the last few years, people on the right are a little bit more open to the idea that people can talk across politics.
Oh, yeah.
People on the left are very, shut down.
Rigid, yeah. And that hurts them a lot.
There's loads of us that are, sort of feel a bit politically homeless, who may have had views that you're supposed to have on the left.
Yeah.
But that kind of clamping down on speech, that kind of cancelling anyone who doesn't agree with you, it just totally put off a huge number of us who I wouldn't really call necessarily liberals, though they're sort of maybe progressives or and so many of us were like, I'm a bit younger, my sort of generation, we grew up going, what is this? You can't talk to the other side?
I know.
And that's why we left.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we go full on batshit,
Right,
you know,
right,
but you
right.
just go, no. I'm sticking with the side who's going to talk to the other side, even though some of the people in it might be a bit. Anyway, where can people get your book?
I know they sell it in the UK in bookstores and Amazon. I tell people if they can get it from an indie bookstore, try that first.
Yeah.
If they can't, then go to Barnes and Noble or I forget what's the name of the. I know in London when I'm there, I see it in
Waterstones, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put the link to Amazon.
Yeah.
I had the same problem. I had a book and I'm like, I don't want to promote Amazon, but that's where everyone's going to get it.
Yeah.
And the reviews and the stars, they've got us. They've monopolized us.
Don't get it from the library.
Yeah.
No, that's a joke.
You get a tiny percentage of it, don't you? I've signed up something in the UK. I get like 1 cent.
I had no idea. Do I?
Maybe, and I don't.
Well,
know.
I should say no. If you don't have money, get it from the fucking library. I'm just. That's kind of a joke.
You're
Some
joking.
people. One of the Congress people at the hearing held up the book. It was like an ad for it, and he goes, "I'm reading this, Mr. Owen. This is amazing.
Your book.
My book." And he goes, "I got it from the Senate Library today." And my mic's not on until it's my turn to answer. And I wanted to say, "Well, no, library. You go down the street and get it at Barnes and Noble. Pay $15, brother."
Absolutely, and then leave a review somewhere.
I know.
I don't know. Look, people, please do and go and get it. We'll have the link down below. You'll be able to. We'll do Amazon and maybe a couple other places then, so you can go and get it from other places as well. Hit this like button. There's a like button here, and watch the next thing that YouTube tells you should watch. Before you go, free cash is linked below and on the QR code. Try it for free and complete your first offer to get the $10 bonus.